Just Desserts is a pretty delicious and very fun episode of Arthur. This is the first segment in the ninth episode of the fifth season, and in this episode, Arthur has eaten far too much, and because he's feeling unwell and lying down on the sofa, Grandma Thora decides to tell him a fairy story. And to begin with, he's a little bit put out by this because he thinks fairy stories are for babies. But she begins to tell him these fairy tales, and it turns out that they are much scarier than he remembered because she's telling him more of the true stories. As we know, things like Disney adaptations of fairy tales and things are a lot softer and more gentle than the real narratives, and this is what we get. The first one is the one that takes up the bulk of the time and is my favourite. It's Hansel and Gretel, with Arthur and DW in the roles of Hansel and Gretel, and Mr. Ratburn as the witch, and he suits that role so well. I thought that was a brilliant choice. It wouldn't have been my choice, but it worked so well. And obviously the house looks delicious and it made me hungry and everything looks amazing. And there are other fairy stories within that, Jack and the Beanstalk. And it's a really fun way to explore the fairy tales. Ordinarily, I'm not a big fan of the Arthur episodes where we have a narrative within a narrative. There was an episode a couple of episodes back, where they were telling the story of the Odyssey, and it was alright, but not great. But actually, this one worked very well. I thought it was fun, it was engaging, it was entertaining, it was delicious, and it was very well put together. It definitely dispels the myth that fairy tales are for babies. Absolutely. And I really thoroughly enjoyed it. It may not be my all-time favourite episode, but Just Desserts is definitely a really good, fun episode of Arthur.